This is going to be the toughest review I have ever done on my YouTube channel. And, there's an old saying in sports where sometimes sports can be a very cruel thing, and that football can sometimes be the cruelest sports you would ever imagine. Well, that old saying couldn't be more true after witnessing this game between the Seattle Sounders versus Minnesota. And that Minnesota, they were 1 minute away from reaching MLS Cup, and that they were also 4 minutes of stoppage time away from potentially sending this game into extra time. But unfortunately, they did a very classic Minnesota thing, which is give up an equalizer in the 89th minute and then suffer an even more heartbreaking and gut punching moment by giving up a goal in the 93rd minute, which would end up be the winner of this game and send the Seattle Sounders into their second consecutive MLS Cup appearance. But despite the fact that I am definitely heartbroken in terms of seeing this resort, and that there is no doubt that this is going to go down as one of the most heartbreaking event I've seen my favorite team have to endure, I got to give some credit to the Seattle Sounders, because the way that they were able to win this game just to show how much of a championship mentality is in that team, and that I can guarantee you that a lot of teams, if they were in the same shoe as the Sounders were in this game, not a lot of team, if any, would actually come out with a 3-2 victory and able to pull off a miraculous comeback. And that if they do win MLS Cup once again for the second year in a row, which is going to be their third MLS Cup in the last 5 years, you got to consider them as one of the greatest and probably one of the best dynasty we have ever seen in league history, with and pretty much right up there in terms of the dynasty of DC United in the early inception of the league in the 90s, and the Galaxy in terms of what they did in the early part of last decade, winning a couple of MLS Cup, and kind of also winning around the same amount of MLS Cup, and took around the same amount year where the Galaxy also won like 3 MLS Cup in a span of 5 years. But before we actually talk about the madness that happened in the second half of this game, especially the last 30 minutes, let's go all the way back in terms of looking at the starting 11, which was pretty much the same starting 11 that Brian Schmitzer and Adrian Heave decided to go for this game in the conference final compared to the one in the conference semifinal. And that in the first half, for the first 10 minutes, there was no real clear-cut chances by either team, which is not a big surprise, because this is kind of one of those games where, since it's a big playoff game and that there's a lot of stake that is at point, there's not going to be a lot of team that's just going to go gun-ho early in the game and trying to maybe get a 1-0 lead, but also risking themselves to potentially find themselves 1-0 down early in the game. And then I guess the other reason you can say why there's not a lot of clear-cut chances and why things usually are very tight in a big game like this is that the nerves are definitely in the player system. And I know this is a game that a lot of these Sounders player has been in for the past couple of years, but still, in such a big game like this, no matter if you're a team that is experienced in these big game or not, you're still going to get that nerves, and it does take about 10 to 20 minutes to trying to settle in before start to kind of take some risk. But during the time when players does have these kind of nervy moment, they of course want to try to play it safe and trying to play it conservative and hope that they don't give up the first goal. Now, despite the fact that there was no real clear-cut chances, I thought Seattle early on looked dangerous whenever they go on the break, and that Minnesota was having a tough time every time when Seattle was looking to go quickly on the break, or they were trying to play over the top ball. But despite the fact that of course is the case, one of the biggest downfall for the Sounders for at least majority of this night is the fact that they were very lackluster in the final third, and they just cannot find that final ball to create any clear-cut chances. I mean, besides the fact that when they finally got those final balls right in the latter part of this game, for majority of the game, it for Minnesota was pretty comfortable in terms of dealing with the Sounders whenever they trying to play a final ball to create clear-cut chances, and that Dane Sinclair didn't really, they got tested a lot for majority of this game because of the fact fact that the Sounders were having a lot of trouble in terms of creating some clear-cut chances. Although in the 14th minute, they did create the first decent chance of the game by either team when Ladero had a 16-yard shot that was blazed over the bar. Then Joao Paulo in the 26th minute had even a better chance as he hits it straight to Dane Sinclair, despite the fact that he had a great look from close range and about 10 yards out. Then just 1 minute later, there was a controversial moment where Shane O'Neill only gets a yellow card after he put a really dangerous challenge on Ethan Finley, and he even kind of showed studs on that tackle on Ethan Finley. And I know there was definitely some Loons fans want Shane O'Neill to be sent off and want the Sounders to be down to 10 men. But as I said before, in the playoffs, whenever we get into these big games or into the playoffs, referee tends to be more lenient in terms of these fouls, and usually they don't show a red card, and they don't like to show a red card unless if it's kind of a malicious kind of event. And when I look at this tackle on Shane O'Neill, yes, it was dangerous and it was right on the border of being a red card, but it was definitely not malicious enough where it was just so obvious that this, of course, has to be a red card. So, because of that, I think it was the right call. The fact that the referee says it was only a yellow, although if this was maybe in the regular season, maybe Shane O'Neill wouldn't be so lucky, and the fact that he probably could have been sent off during that point. Now, despite the fact that Minnesota fans are probably upset the fact that there should have been a red card in this, they were definitely not upset when Reynoso was able to score a wonderful free kick from about 30 yards out on the very next sequence to give Minnesota a 1-0 lead. And, besides the fact that this ends up to be a heartbreaking loss for Minnesota, I think what's even more heartbreaking is the fact that Reynoso, he once again had an incredible game for Minnesota, and he was one of the reasons why the Loons was in a winning position for a very long time. And because of the fact that the Sounders would eventually complete a miraculous comeback, this headline of Reynoso having an incredible game and the free kick that he scored is going to bury down in the headlines. And it's just such a shame because it was an incredible goal, and that, for Reynoso, if this is something that we're going to continue to see for him for next season for Minnesota, not only the fact that I said before, he is definitely worth every penny that we paid Boca Jr. to get him, but I am truly excited what Reynoso can do with this Minnesota team, and that at the end, when you look at some of the stats that he actually have around the same number as some of these top number 10 players like Nicholas Ladero and Alejandro Pozuelo, and he's only been here for a couple of months. So imagine if he does get a full season, he could definitely be the top assist man, or even maybe trying to break the record in terms of the most assists we ever seen in the league. So yeah, I'm despite the fact that it is disappointed at the end of the day, we forgot what a great shift that Reynoso was able to put for Minnesota in this game. I'm really excited what he's going to definitely produce next year. Now, despite the fact that the Loons, of course, got that 1-0 lead, Seattle immediately trying to go on the attack and immediately trying to get the equalizer. But as I said before, and this won't be the first time I mention this, even though they were getting space to operate because they were overrunning the Minnesota midfield, the final ball was just not there for them. And then in the 38th minute, Stephen Fry had to make a big save to deny Finley, who went through on goal. And as much as I really want this to be 2-0 in favor of Minnesota, and that as much as I really wish Finley would have put this one away, I got to give credit to Stephen Fry, where once again, this is what he does in terms of the playoffs, where he makes some big save to keep the Sounders in this game. And if the Sounders win 2-0 down in this game, there is no doubt that there's going to be some dejection that's going to be happening from the Sounders player, and that Minnesota is going to feel like this is going to be like what happened against SKC, where they're able to get enough goals where that in the second half all they need is to just kind of shut things down, and that there's going to be a lot of confidence that this team, of course, would have if they would have been up 2-0. But instead, it was still 1-0 in favor of Minnesota, and that the Sounders themselves, they almost looked like they were going to be heading to halftime as the team to have more confidence, when Ruidíaz probably should have scored this one from about 6 yards out, but unfortunately he blazed this one over the bar. And to be fair, this one was a bit of a tough one for him because this one was kind of a little behind him and he was a little bit off balance when he shot this one. But this is Raul Ruidiaz we're talking about. I mean, he can basically score even when he is off balance, and that I think for such a lethal striker as he is, he probably should have done much better and at least put this one on target. But as we head into the second half, Ruidiaz thought that he finally score and that the Sounders thought that they finally got the equalizer, but unfortunately VAR disallowed this goal because when Ruidiaz went through on goal and eventually beat Dane Sinclair to give the Sounders the equalizer, before that he basically fouled Boxall, and that was kind of the reason why he was able to go through on goal. Now, when I saw that, instantly what I kind of remember was there was a very similar incident that we saw earlier in the regular season, and I think it was the game between New England versus TFC, where remember that game where TFC would eventually win 1-0, and the winner of the only goal that turns out to be the winner was Ayo Akinola basically scoring that goal. Well, that goal that Akinola scored was kind of similar to the play that Ruidiaz scored the goal, where he basically decided to shove the last defender to basically go through on goal, and at that time I believe Akinola actually shoved Ferrell to the ground, and he basically puts into the back of the net after he went through on goal. Now, in that instant, the goal of course stands, but in this instant, the goal did not stand. And when I look at both of those instances, they look kind of similar situation and look like the way Ruidiaz shoved Boxall down is kind of similar to how Akinola shoved Ferrell down. And that back then, I think the argument for the reason why that goal was given is because the fact that Akinola was the one that's more stronger to it, and that Ferrell was just kind of a little bit too weak and got beat in terms of trying to kind of do a shoulder to shoulder challenge. But in this case, I thought this was kind of the same, where Ruidiaz just simply beat Boxall in terms of both of them trying to go for the ball, but yet in this instant, the goal of course was not given, and that this also kind of goes back to, well, where's the consistent in terms of that? I mean, obviously, as much as even though I was thinking about this, I was still just happy the fact that we were still up 1-0 at that point, but I also kind of wish that we would have saw some consistency, and that, you know, if we what we saw in the regular season in terms of that instant when the goal was given, then why in the world would this instant, which was also very similar to that, not given because of it? Now, despite that, again, Seattle, they continued to look for the equalizer, and they started to really push a high line to trying to get that equalizer. But again, they were still struggling to trying to get that final ball, and that there was just way too many times when they tried to cross it into the box, no one was able to get to the end of the cross, or the fact that one of the Minnesota defender was able to clear it away whenever the Sounders is trying to cross it into the box. Now, they did came close in the 64th minute when Morris was able to hit the post, but then just 3 minutes later, Dibasi scores from Reynoso on the free kick to give Minnesota a 2-0 lead, and at that point, you're thinking it's game, set, and match, isn't it? I mean, you know, for this looked like it was just going to be one of those games where Minnesota were the more clinical side and Seattle were not the more clinical side, and it just feels like there was just no way back for this team. This is when the comeback started in the 75th minute, as Will Bruin, the one that started the comeback in the 75th minute to get the Sounders a goal and get them back into this game. Then there was another controversial play where there was no penalty given, despite the fact that Gasper looked like he brought down Rodon into the box. And originally, I thought that Minnesota might have got away with a penalty, but the more I look at it, I think maybe it was just a case where both players kind of got tangled up against each other, and that therefore that is the reason why there was no penalty was given. And as the time continued to go, obviously I was definitely getting more nervous, because we were just kind of just sitting back and just pretty much holding on for dear life, and that I also saw that we were kind of started getting a little bit more tired with the way that we were just kind of unable to keep possession and trying to only just try to milk down the clock. And you know, most of the time when I see teams try to do that, usually sometimes it's successful if you can get over the line, but then there are also sometimes where when you try to do that and sometimes it won't be successful and the other team eventually find a way to break through. And in this case, it was the latter. The Sounders eventually find a way to break through, and it was Ruidíaz that scores to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And at that point, I was definitely heartbroken the fact that we weren't able to hold on to that lead. But then I was also worried that, yeah, is this going to happen? Is this going to be a classic Minnesota thing where they gave up a goal late and they just going to get capitulated and that they're going to give up another one late in the game? Well, it looked like they almost did in the first minute of stoppage time when Ruidíaz hit the post on a redirect shot. And then, yeah, the heartbreaking moment happened. Or if you're a Sounders fan, the miraculous thing happened. Swenson scores from Ladero to give the Sounders a 3-2 lead. This came from a corner where it was a wonderful delivery from Nico Ladero to Gustav Swenson to basically head that one in. And yeah, that of course is the final action and really the final score of this game, as the Sounders were able to win 3-2. And the shots in this game, 24 shots compared to 7 that Minnesota has, 5 shots on goal compared to 5 that Minnesota has, 7 shots off target compared to none that Minnesota has, 12 shots that was blocked compared to 2 that Minnesota has, and possession-wise, 63% possession compared to 37% possession. And I don't know what else to say other than the fact that, yeah, this was definitely going to go down as the most heartbreaking loss I've ever seen Minnesota ever suffer. And that this kind of loss also reminds me a little bit what happened a couple of years ago remember a couple of years ago when the Quakes were playing LAFC at home, and I was actually at the game for this, where they were up 3-2 late in the game against LAFC only to give up the goal in the 89th minute to tie the game up at 3 apiece. And then in the 93rd minute, I think LAFC scored a goal to basically make it 4-3 in that game. And that at that point, I thought that was probably the most heartbreaking loss I've ever seen my team endure. Well, looks like it was deja vu all over again. And if you ask me, compared to that heartbreaking loss, this one probably hurts even more. Mainly because this was a conference final. This was one that if the Loons, all they need to hold on to, just not even like 5 minutes, but just hold on for 1 more minute and 4 minutes of stoppage time, then they can basically go through into MLS Cup. And even though I know they of course can see the equalizer, if they can just hold on for 3 more minutes and maybe send this one to extra time and see what happens, they could have also made it to MLS Cup. But unfortunately, it was just not meant to be, and that, it's another heartbreaking kind of, well, I wouldn't say it's another heartbreaking kind of moment, but it ends up to be a heartbreaking moment for Minnesota. And that, despite the fact that I know this is going to, at the end of this season, and that this is definitely not a way that I was hoping the Loons will end the season in the playoffs, I still got to be proud in terms of how far that they have made into the playoffs. And this is just going to give them kind of experience to kind of learn from it, because remember, this is a team that is still only in their second playoff appearance, and that I think things are eventually going to get better once that they of course got the experience. And that if this is a team that is going to continue to add some pieces, maybe on the defensive end, or also maybe getting a true number 9, this team can definitely be a competitive team heading into the Western Conference. And I have no doubt that they're going to be back in this stage heading into next season. But for the Seattle Sounders, again, this is just the stuff of what champions are made. And you just wonder, I don't want to upset any Crew fan, but is this kind of a comeback that not only give the Sounders a lot more confident and a lot more momentum heading into MLS Cup, but is this just kind of once again destiny of seeing a team having such an incredible moment in the conference final, and they're gonna ride that wave into MLS Cup and eventually winning the whole thing all over again. But we shall see how that is gonna be the case on Sunday. And yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much the end of the review. And by the way, I actually haven't had time to explain this, but the reason why I have actually spent a lot well, the reason why this video hasn't been uploaded until a couple of hours after the game is over is because I've been spending a lot of attempt to trying to get this one right. I mean, the first couple of times I've been trying kind of make me sound like I was just depressed or when I was doing this review. And yes, I was kind of a little bit depressed and heartbroken with the way that Minnesota eventually lost this game, but I want to trying to make sure whenever I do this review, I want to be unbiased and at least be a little bit cheerful in terms of the way how this game of course would play. But yeah, that's why this video didn't get uploaded onto my YouTube channel until a couple of hours after the game is over. But hopefully, if this was a video where I of course would give you guys some enough insight in terms of what actually happened, and that it's definitely worth the wait in terms of me finally uploading this video. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.